Hello and welcome everybody once again to Mystic Times. This is Rafa. I'm very happy once more to be joined by Emily Moyer. How are you, Emily?
I'm doing great, Rafa. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing very good too. Super happy once again to speak with you. Our conversations are very fun for me. They open my mind and they help me to explore my own ideas as well and like join them a little bit with the ones that you bring forth also, which are always very original. And I don't know where you what you're connected to and where you get those ideas from, but they are very interesting and unique.
Well, thank you. So before we get started, I just want to, Laura is cooking because I somehow this didn't end up on my calendar properly. And so Laura is cooking. And so when you are talking, I will mute so people don't hear the noise of her cooking there. So just, if it's slightly distracting, just imagine the wonderful smell of chuck roast and butternut squash soup that Laura is making, and it will all be okay.
Awesome. I hope
She says 10 more minutes and then there won't be any noise there. Anyway.
No problem.
Okay,
I hope
cool.
it turns out very delicious. What's the name again of the thing? I understood the second part, squash soup, and the first.
She's making a roast. She's making like a roast, like
okay.
A grass-fed chuck roast kind of, thing, beef, and then she's making roast beef kind of thing, right? And then she's making butternut squash soup.
Butternut squash soup. That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So where shall we start today, my friend?
Well, so I wanted to tell you something. Just before we started, just to let people know, we were talking a little bit about spaces and our environment and changes in that. And I have one short story that I've been wanting to tell you about since the last time we spoke. It happened before that even, but it didn't come to mind to mention it. So I wanted to bring it forth today, to bring it up today. And so how to explain? Okay, so I was driving. Okay, I'll just go ahead and tell you the story. I was driving on the highway, yeah, going just on a weekend, just going to a close by beach. I don't know, it's maybe like, I don't know in miles, but 60 something kilometers from here. So I don't know what's like 50 miles or something like that. I'm not sure. So it's relatively close. Okay, so I was just driving with my girlfriend. We decided to start going. There's this part which is called the Interbalnearia. So we have different coastal towns and small cities. Okay, and there's this road which you can take, and you can just go turn to the side towards the coast and enter this town which has its own beach, and then you can come out. Okay, so this story is crazy because I was driving and I went into one of these towns. So I turned right, then I turned left inside this town into like one of the first streets on the inside of the town, and just started driving there and looking at the houses and seeing how people live there, which is more closer to nature, less urban. Okay, so we were just driving, and then we reached kind of the end of this town. They are relatively small, and then we turned left again to get back into the main highway. And the weird thing is that we turn left and get into the highway, and it's crazy because I mean, I listen to myself just thinking that I'm going to say this, and so I'll just say it. Okay, so we turn left, get into the highway again, and when we're in the highway, we have to turn right to get back here. But if you understand the process, we were actually going the other way. So it's kind of like the road is here. We go into the town towards the right, we go up, let's say, then we go left, and our origin spot should be left, but we get back into the road and we have to go right. So actually what I think is that when we got into the road, we actually got in here, turn here, and right would be back to our hometown. You know what I mean? So it's like we came in here and somehow in certain point, we got teletransported over here. I don't know what happened. And I just wanted to share this and see what you come up with.
So it makes me think of a couple of things. So first of all, it makes me think of, for anyone who's ever had the experience of going to New York City, right? And there, when you get off, and I'm sure there's other places like this too, but it's the only place I've ever lived that has the subway system where you can get off on all four corners of an intersection, right? So when you get off at your stop, depending on which exit or which set of stairs you take, you'll end up on any one of the four corners, right? And when you first, I lived in New York back 18 years ago or whatever for a year. When you first move there, you haven't sorted this out yet. And so what will happen sometimes is you will get out of the trains, the subway station, and you'll think you're going to be on a corner you recognize, but you come out and you're like at the right intersection, but on a different corner than you came out before. So everything looks turned around and backwards. And so you don't know what is going on, right? So everything is in the exact opposite position. So it's kind of like where you were. It was like you found yourself on the other side and on the wrong, like facing the wrong way, right? And it can be very disorienting. And then like, it can also be that like maybe you're not paying attention, right? Like maybe you're visiting with friends and they know where they're going. So you're just talking and following and they're leading the way. And suddenly you're not even paying attention to which stop you got off the train or whatever. But you end up, you get out, you go up to the street and you're like, oh, this is weird. This looks like a place I've been before, but only backwards, right? Like, so it made me, and it takes a while to sort out that, oh, I see, there's like 4 different exits from each train station. And if you go on the wrong one, or the different one, you're going to end up, and then you sort of sort it out because, you usually just take the first set of stairs you see, right? And then you start following people. And sometimes you're not exactly paying attention to whether there's multiple ways you could go and whatnot. So it can be very disorienting, and it sounds stupid, but anybody who's moved to New York has definitely had this experience sometime in their first week or two living there, right? So I don't know if when I lived in Washington, D.C., they have the metro. It's not the same. There's just one exit on each side of the street. There's not all 4 corners, so it's not quite as confusing. So it made me think of that, but then it also made me think of one episode of Fringe, and I'm going to do my best to make sure I get this right, because I'm not sure if I'm thinking of one episode or if I'm conflating 2 episodes, because it's been a while since I watched it. But there was this town that they went to solve a case, right? And they when they went to try and leave it, they kept ending up back circling around someplace they'd already been before. I can't remember if this was the Project Elephant episode where it was like the people had distorted faces, or if it was the other, was it that episode? Okay, so yeah, Laura's saying it's the Project Elephant episode. So basically they go into this town that has all this weird stuff going on. And what they come to learn while they're there is that there had been a military experiment many years earlier that had left the people disfigured, right? That had and it was a congenital defect. So their children are also disfigured and whatnot, right? And the solution that the military came up with to deal with this, everybody in the town looked like this. So it wasn't a problem for that. But when other people would come through, people would be afraid to stop and visit because everybody looked like monsters. So the military generated a frequency that would make a veil that made them look normal, right? And so this set of frequencies also had this other effect of basically, like at nighttime, the frequency wasn't happening. During the daytime, it was happening, right? And so depending on the time of day that you tried to leave, right, if you didn't understand that this was happening, you might find yourself circling and circling and circling because the frequency wall ended at a certain spot, right? And so they were all day long circling around until they realized they weren't actually going anywhere. And it made me think about, so those 2 things were the first thing to pop to my mind. And the only thing that I can think about, because I've had this happen to me before in like Malibu, which is also a beach town in Los Angeles. There's a lot of these roads, canyon roads, as you're coming from a more urban area into the beach community. And then when you're on your way back out, there's a lot of these canyon roads that look similar to one another. And that some of them also even have these little tiny forks in them that if you're talking, when you get to that part, you miss that you did it. Right. And I've had that same kind of thing happen to me before, where I end up in a place that I recognize, like I know I've been here before, but how did I end up here based on what I was doing. And it's just those little, but I also wonder if some of that is just those locations. Like, I wonder if there's a phenomenon to places with that kind of geography. So you have a mountainous area, right? Was there mountains kind of in the area you were, or just flat? Just flat. Okay. So in Malibu, it's mountains right up to the ocean. So you have these very large rocks. And of course they have granite in them, or different kinds of quartz or crystals. So they have their own properties. And then you have the salt water, right? So I'm just wondering if there's sort of like some sort of time distortion or spatial distortion thing happening. But in your case, it's flat. But I would wonder sort of what the makeup of the land and the ground and the sand.
Ground here has, I think it's agate.
Agate?
Yeah, the purple one.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
There's a lot of that here in our country.
So my guess would be that probably has some temporal distortion or some spatial distortion possibilities about it, even if it's just that you think you're paying attention and you're not. Like, it creates a loss of time for the person. So like, they think they're paying attention to everything they're doing, but it's been much longer or much shorter of a time than they think. And maybe they passed something they didn't realize they passed. So those would be my best guesses. But also check out that episode of Fringe, right? Because whatever else may be going on in the area too. Like if there's a certain kind of cell phone tower or electrical tower or whatever generating a certain kind of frequency, that as well.
Because I mean, the crazy thing is that in order to exit the town and go back to Montevideo, coming back here, I would have had to exit that town, turn right, and then go to somewhere where I could cross to the other side of the highway, and then come down and go into another town. But I was in the town on the coast side. So in order to come back, I would have had to do something complicated and go left. But when I exit the town, I turn right because I was going that way before. So to continue moving forward, I turn right. And when I turn right, I realized from the billboards that I'm going back to
the ocean. So did your wife have the same experience?
Yeah.
Okay, so she was with you. It's always more validating when someone who's not crazy like we are has the same experience, right? So there you go. So yeah, no, I think these occurrences are much more common in like areas, like they're not as common in cities, right? These are more common out in like ocean beach community or mountain community or around lakes and rivers. I don't think that happens too often in like right downtown in the urban area. If that were to happen, I definitely think it was much more of like a technological cause to it, right? It's something based on the technologies being deployed in the area. And it's possible in the more natural environments too, but in the natural environments, I'm much more inclined to think that it has to do with the makeup of the ground and the saline content of the water, or like, there's a lot of places that have the mineral springs and the hot springs with certain kinds of properties. And sometimes you can get in those hot springs and you think you're in there for like 20 minutes, but you've been in there for like an hour and a half. And suddenly you're like fainting because you've been in the hot water so long, but it didn't seem like that long to you or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess some kind of electromagnetic amplification that happened in a moment. I don't know. It was very crazy. Then I have something else very interesting, and I'm going to see if I can like bring up a map to show you the route that I was taking.
Okay.
But before I do that, let me tell you this other thing. Okay, so another space distortion, space jump. We've been talking so much, you on your show and with me here, we've been talking so much about time distortions, and there's something weird going on with time in this recent couple of years, mainly. Especially there's been like a spike on that weirdness. But since I had this experience and a couple others, I wanted to also bring up the other side of the coin, which is space. Okay, so the other thing is I go sometimes to visit my parents, and when I do, they live in a building, and so I just like going up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. They live on the 4th floor, so I just let's just do a little bit of exercise, whatever. Yeah. So I just take the stairs and I start going up. And it's happened to me like 2 or 3 times already that I'm going up. So I do I go up onto the first floor, then up again onto the second floor, and then up again, and I'm suddenly on their floor. So it's like I'm skipping a floor. But the first time I thought, okay, I guess I'm just not paying attention because I'm just focused on the running up the stairs or whatever, and I'm kind of distracted. But it happened just 2 or 3 times, the same thing, and I'm pretty sure I'm skipping the same floor, which is also very weird, right? You have anything like that happen?
So, well, a couple of things come. So, I can't. So most of the times that I've lived in buildings where there was the option, like right now I live on the 3rd floor where I am, but I do take the elevator. And sometimes I forget to push the button when I get in there. So I end up on the different floor. I don't take the stairs very often here when I'm just like coming home. Well, when we come home, we park on the 3rd floor, so we don't have to take the stairs, right? Because the parking garage is connected. But if I go out for exercise, I take the elevator up because if I wanted to take the stairway up, I'd have to go through another set of security doors. So I don't take the stairs too often here. But when I lived in like downtown LA, I lived on the 11th floor. So I didn't take the stairs too often because they were like, it was a really big building. The same building I was just showing in the show with Howdy last week. We were showing the building I used to live in downtown LA. I've done it a couple times, but not enough to notice something like that. So, but what it made me think about is, does there like one friend of mine, she's a patron and she's, you know, in a lot of the groups and stuff. Her sister lives in a very famous building in Montevideo. Do you know which building I'm talking about? She showed me the building and his apartments, and it was like fantastic inside. It was like one of the oldest, most famous buildings in downtown.
Maybe it's called Palacio Salvo.
Maybe, let me see. How do you, can you give me, how do you spell that? Either you look it up and show me.
I'll give you a screen share. It's called like Palacio, instead of the E-I-O at the end, Palacio, and S-A-L-V-O, Salvo. Palacio
Salvo, Montevideo. Let me see if this is the one.
I think I gave you a screen share, just to confirm.
All right, let me see if I've got screen share here. Screen share, yep. Okay, so this is the one. Okay, yeah, I think this is probably the building. Let me see if there's any pictures from the inside, because she showed me like some pictures of the inside. Yeah, this is the same one. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so now I didn't know if your parents live in the same building. Your parents don't live in this building, do they?
No.
Okay, so when I'm looking at a building like this, look at this. This is crazy, right?
That one is very, very crazy. It's kind of from when you look at it from where I live, you can see towards the horizon, you can see the old city, and the shape of it, it's kind of very much like a phallus, you know, a phallic symbol.
And of course, they've destroyed it with cell towers on top of that too. But I mean, you look at this, and this is obviously very, very old.
Yeah.
But this would be like for 200, for however old this is, 100 years, 200 years, I don't know. Like for people who've heard me on my own shows talking about like interdimensional architecture, like, so look at this one, right? And then look at this building, right? This is the one I like to use the most when I'm talking about the interdimensional architecture. Oops, hold on.
And this building we were just showing, the Palacio Salvo, has a twin building in Buenos Aires, across the water.
Okay, so here's the independent. That's interesting. That's interesting because my guess would be that you can move between those buildings. Okay, so this is the Independent in Austin, right? You can see it from different. Okay, but this one you show me is like, that is the 200-year-old version of the same thing. See how it also has all these in, out, missing pieces, like some parts of it. See like how there's parts that stick out over where there's nothing else. And right, when you look at this one, you see how this area sticks out over nothing else, over here sticks out. So this would be the Tartarian version of interdimensional architecture, where this would be the current version of that. So my guess would be in a building like that what you're talking about probably would be pretty common, right? So again, we'll refer to fringe because it's just so easy to do. I think in the end of the first season, like last episode of the first season, second episode of the first episode of the second season, Olivia goes to New York to meet with William Bell, and she takes the elevator up in this dimension and exits the elevator in another dimension, because when she gets out, or another reality, when she gets out of the elevator and goes into his office, she realizes she's in the Twin Towers, which don't exist anymore in her reality, and that the New York skyline looks different than or she's either in the Twin Towers or she can see the Twin Towers. I can't remember. It's right. So my guess would be that in some of these buildings, right, depending which floor you get off on, you're someplace else. Right, that this is the purpose of some of this stuff. I've gone on and on with Michael and other people about the location and how I think it's built right on what I consider to be one of the portal areas of Austin. And that and one thing that I've been tossing around with a lot of people lately is when you have a room in a building that looks almost exactly the same or exactly the same as a room in another building, can you get to the other one from there, right? So the fact that you said that Salvo, Palacio Salvo, has a twin building in Argentina, my guess would be that there are people that travel the faster way, if you know what I mean, right? They're not taking the airplane or the train or the whatever, right? They're taking the jump room. So I think in some of these old buildings, and now particularly you were going like this, so I'm assuming that meant there was a spiral staircase.
I mean, it's just a square building. Let's say the floor would be a square, and you go up. You get into the hallway that does like a U.
Okay, so it's not a spiral. No. So it's not a spiral. Okay, if it was a spiral, I like spiral staircases are really interesting, right? Like those are because you're making like a vortex with your movements. Now, it's not that you're not with the other kind too. You are making like geometric cuts and shapes and things like that. So that's interesting. Is the building old?
My parents' building, maybe. I'm not sure the exact time, but like it's not very old, perhaps like from the 70s or the 60s, perhaps.
Okay. So, I mean, I don't know, but I certainly think that such a thing is possible. So I don't know the answer to why that's happening in that particular case, but I'm starting to understand that the buildings are, at least the way the buildings as they're being constructed now here in Austin, their technology and the fact that people use them to house themselves or to work in is like, that's a secondary feature of the building, but the building itself is a type of technology, right? And the type of technology, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if all buildings are the same kind of technology. Right? They look like, if you look at some of these pictures from Austin here, where you can just see the skyline, right? You can see there's like all sorts of weird, different looking kind of stuff. You even have like the Google building here, right? Well, what if the building itself was the server? Not the server is inside the building is the server, and the people are working inside of the server, right? There's like another building in Austin. Let me see if I can find the part of the skyline that shows this other building. Like there's one building here that looks like a USB stick. Right here. Okay, so over here, right here, see it? It looks like when you have the USB drive, you have the retractable part, you can pull it in or push it out, right? Look.
Over there, yeah, totally.
Yeah, right? So there's ones that look like that. This one is like half the building is down here, and then there's nothing there, and then so what's happening in that space in between, right? So it's like, I think there's, lots of uses. So here's the markup for this one. So look at this. This looks like some sort of piece of the computer, and this is another part of the technology. And you see there's like the way these are the patios of the apartments, but they also look like, if you look at like some technologies that do like genetic markers and stuff like that, like there's all kinds of stuff going on here. And I think
the part at the bottom reminds me of the US Embassy here. The bottom part only.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, look at from some of these angles, it's just like, whoa, that shit's crazy. Right. So I think they're being used for a number of things. And yeah, I think it is interesting when you have something like that happen repetitively there. Like, I don't know if they just excluded the third floor from the stairway and the only way to get to the third floor is on the elevator, or if it's just like you're losing time there. Like for some reason, there's a frequency band or an energy there that like you tune out for a minute and
because when it's recent, it's never happened. I lived in that building for like the first 12 years of my life. Then we moved out, and then they came back by themselves. So it's a building, a stairs. I've gone up and down the stairs all my life.
That's interesting. Yeah. Is there a 5G tower close by?
I don't know.
I would look and see if there's a 5G tower or a cell tower close by, because we're starting to really reconsider what, like, I don't think anything that they tell us 5G is what it is. I think it's something total. I don't think it has anything to do with what they say. I think it has to do, like Michael and I were tossing this around last week about whether it is the 5G tower is causing a rift in that portion of the simulation, so things from other dimensions or times or spaces can come in, or if the rift already exists and they're using the 5G tower to try and hold it together, to close it. We're not sure which it is, but we're noticing that there seems to be rifts in the areas where there are 5G towers.
Yeah, it made me think of that idea when they detonated the first atomic bomb, you know, in the test and all that, there's this idea that it had an effect on other dimensions, and that's why, for example, UFOs started appearing close to that date or becoming more common. So I'm looking at the distance between the Palacio Salvo here in Montevideo and its twin, which is called Palacio Barolo.
Yeah.
It's 200 kilometers. I don't know if I can put this in miles, but let me tell you in miles. 2 miles, it's 2 miles. It's 124 miles.
Okay, so I would be willing to bet. I would be willing to go out on a limb.
Share the screen, yeah.
I would be willing to bet that at least one or more, but not many, like one or a few apartments in those buildings, if you were to go in, right, like the same person is owning the space in Argentina and in Uruguay, but it's not like they own both apartments. Maybe they do, I don't know, but there's a crossover, right? That like let's just say, okay, so I see.
They just need to be able to go out of one apartment in Buenos Aires into the hallway in Montevideo. They don't even need to, right, to own both.
Correct. So let me show you where I would think it would be. So stop your screen share so I can show you something.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back here. So
I'm talking about it.
So like maybe these apartments that are on the four corners here, right? Like these ones up here, or maybe, right? Like these ones, I'd say maybe those have some interdimensionality to it. Or
I'm not seeing your screen.
Oh, I didn't share. I'm sorry. I always think I'm sharing, but I'm not sharing. Okay, now I'm going to share. Okay, so where these ones are, these apartments here, right, in this space, or even this, right, those things, or if there's a penthouse, so up here in the circle up the top or whatnot, I wouldn't necessarily think it was like the part that's pointing into the sky, like this part, that's the tower. But who lives here? Who lives in these four things? Right? My guess would be that if there's any interdimensionality to the building, it would be in one of those apartments, and those ones are probably the most expensive, right? So let's go see so this is the one in Montevideo. I want to see.
The other one is called
Palacio Barolo.
Yeah, BAR.
Barolo, and that one's in Buenos Aires.
Yes. And in this Salvo building, I believe I'm not sure which floor exactly, but one of the top floors has a recording studio for music.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's famous because of the view.
All right, so look at this. This is the top-down view from the very center of that, and look what we have here on the floor. This is a portal right here. This has all the signs and symbols that we see in buildings that we know for sure are portals. But let's go and look. So this is Barolo, so that has the same thing, that same kind of height, right? And these four corners. Now the difference seems to be that where on the block, like this seems to be the one in Montevideo seems to be a corner building. Yeah. Well, this one does too. So it's the same, but like reverse. It's kind of interesting. Oh, look at this. Yes, this is a portal.
That's totally psychedelic. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's very psychedelic, but just looking at this right here, for sure, this is some kind of interdimensional architecture. And I don't know if this is into other worlds, and like maybe it doesn't take you to, like maybe if you go in Buenos Aires, when you step out in Montevideo, it's not in this same dimension. It's in another dimension, but like if you watched in the OA, right, like the same hospital that was like the mental health center in one reality was abandoned in the other one, but it's the same building, right? So it may be a completely different, it might not let you out in the building that you could go and see, but there's another version of that same building in another dimension and whatnot. Oh, here's the blueprints of these buildings. Look at these.
I think they were made in the 20s by the same architect.
Yeah. So, but these are, I mean, there's definitely something I'm going to have to ask my friend who has a sister who lives in the one in Montevideo, if she's had any strange experiences there yet. I mean, also look here at the way these curve back, and then they have portholes like a ship, right? Those look like the portholes on a ship. Yeah, this is definitely a building that you could travel from. And then of course they shoot the light up from it, right? And that's kind of like, they do this with like the Luxor in Las Vegas and stuff like that, right? And so that's sort of like even piercing space-time dimensions. Oh, wow, look at these. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. Wow. Wow. Oh, that's so cool. I wish I could go visit that.
This one is from 1923 is when it was completed, started in 1919, and the one in Montevideo from 25 to 1928. And the interesting thing about the 1928 number is that let's say the independence of Uruguay was, or this is of Montevideo. Well, I'm confusing the historical thing, but the independence date here is 1828.
Did you say the independent state?
Yeah.
Okay, and remember that building that I showed you in Austin is called Independent.
Yeah.
Right, that's the name of the building. So that's kind of interesting as well. So is there any, what is the, like, why did they build these twin buildings in two different cities? Is there some kind of other connection between Uruguay and Argentina, or Buenos Aires and Montevideo? I don't know too much about either country. You know, so I know obviously about like the Nazi connection to Argentina, and I know about, you know, Eva Perón and Che Guevara and all that stuff, but that's, I don't know much else.
Well, what I can tell you again is in connection with independence, it's that Uruguay, from where it's located geographically, we have an amazing water ingress, let's say, into the continent. So we have what's known as the widest river on the planet. That's
the River Plata?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's the one that the line between these two buildings crosses. Okay. And in 1828, this guy called Lord Ponsonby, or around that year, this guy from England came here to like mediate, because Uruguay, for its location, it's also known like as a cork state, you know, like the cork from a bottle. It's like a wedge in between Brazil, giant, and Argentina on the other side. And whoever was capable of owning the land of Montevideo would have access to, or the land of Uruguay, sorry, would have access to the Montevideo port, which is an amazing port. And it's an envy of the region.
Okay, so one of the things I understand, so like here in like Austin used to be called Waterloo City, apparently, right? And then Austin, like if you, there's like this idea maybe that there's like a lot of gold under the ground here in the Colorado River, right? Austin, the first two letters of the word is AU, which is the chemical that if you look on the periodic table, AU is gold. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in Spanish, both Plata and Argentina are both silver, right? Those are both ways of saying silver. So my guess would be that the connection has to do with the flow of silver, right? That there's like a vein that runs all the way from, so if you can show me again that map where you showed me the distance between them.
Yes. Let me see, I think it's this one over here. No, sorry, yes. Yeah, here we go.
Okay, so, and this is where it's coming out of the river here, right? This is the river?
You can see down here, Rio de la Plata.
Okay, yeah.
Which they translated into River Plate, which makes no sense.
Right, it's the silver river though. So there's a vein of silver that is running, right? And it's kind of like these two, like these are, I guess these are just the two places that silver has flowed to. If you look at that, these are the most populated places on the map. And so like if Austin here is like where the gold in the river flowed to, right? And that's why you have like this important city that is the capital. Montevideo is the capital of Uruguay, yes?
Yes.
Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina.
Correct.
So I think maybe what is in order here is for us to go looking into whether all of the capitals of states and countries exist in places where there's a river that has a flow of a precious metal, right? Because this seems to be the connection between these two things. So Plata is silver, Argentina is Argenta, or Argentina means silver, right? I got that right? Okay. So my guess would be that that's what the connection is. And the amount of silver maybe is part of the transportation mechanism here, right? Like this is what makes portal jumping possible here. I'd also be curious as to if there's an underground base or like an underground train that is connecting those.
And also you can see how both you know, the two spots here which mark they mark the buildings, they are kind of pretty eccentric, you know, like if you were to drop like some ink or whatever and it exploded, you know, here for example Montevideo, if you were to drop it right on the building, it would kind of flow outward like that. And in Buenos Aires, it's very similar. It's like very centric, you know, very close to the coast.
I didn't realize that Montevideo is bigger than Buenos Aires.
No, it's not.
Okay, why does it look so much bigger?
No, Montevideo is this one on the right.
Oh, Montevideo, this is Buenos Aires over here. Okay, okay, this is I was looking at it the wrong day. So this is Montevideo, this is Buenos Aires on the left, on the right. Is okay,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha. Okay, I gotcha. All right, so that makes more sense to me. Okay. Yeah, but I bet you it has to do with that silver vein coming through. So, and then when you run the water, right, when the water runs over that sort of bed of silver or whatever, that creates an electric property to the water that's coming through there, right? And then all that energy is sort of built up and stored in this inlet, this bay here, right? And so you're able to have this sort of connection between those two cities like that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I see what you mean. You mean like in this bay here?
No, I mean like.
Oh, okay,
so
in the whole river delta, let's say.
In the whole delta, right. Yeah.
Because the part that I'm pointing at, I don't know if you can see my arrow. You can? Yeah? Yeah. This part is exactly, it's the Montevideo port, especially this area over here, which is, as I was saying, a very strategically good port because of how it works. But at the same time, it has another characteristic, which is interesting, that very regularly they have to like, I don't know what's the name, but they have to like dig out the sand that starts accumulating over there. So there's regularly kind of boats or whatever that they remove the sand that starts accumulating.
And it's interesting. So this is the port, and then this out here is the river. This is a big river. I was thinking this was the ocean.
Yeah.
That's a big river.
I mean, what you could call the river would be like from, I'm moving this, like from here, or even more, from here to here, the mouth, let's say, of the river. It's like
this is the ocean. Almost this is the ocean out here, but out here is the ocean, right?
Yeah, let me just zoom out a little bit more.
Okay.
So you can see. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Right.
How many people? What's the population of Montevideo?
Around 1.5 million.
Okay, so it's about the same size as Austin, maybe a little smaller. Interesting. Okay. Very cool.
So if I go a little bit, even the ocean, we could say it kind of starts here. So it's so it's like 300 and something kilometers. It's a pretty wide like mouth for this river.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Yeah, you've told me about the river before. You've shown me the river before, but I didn't like back here seems wide, like back to the left seems pretty wide. I didn't realize. I see now exactly what it looks like in comparison to the ocean. And that is crazy that there's two major cities just across the river from each other, right? That's fascinating. Yeah.
And there's a whole history. We're like, Buenos Aires is like the big brother and we're like the small brother. And there's this kind of rivalry between us. And also something that's interesting that I'm seeing here, maybe you see it too. You see how the blue space in between Uruguay and Argentina,
Yeah.
it kind of resembles the shape of the continent of South America.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty intense.
That's pretty, yeah, that is interesting. And I wonder, so zoom out again so I can see the Africa over here.
Well,
so I'm wondering, so like this area that is sort of, well, let's see. So this bottom, you can see where sort of it would have fit in together down there, this. So it's kind of like where Montevideo is, would be in this area. I don't think that's quite South Africa. It might be South Africa is pretty big.
I think it would connect to like this part where there's sand here. What is this?
Yeah.
Right, more or less around this area.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. Let's see. I wonder if it's not giving us any description on there of what it is. Get the information. Let's get the labels. Okay, so it's in Namibia.
Namibia, yeah.
That would be like Namibia. And then scrolling down, I just want to see how far down South Africa is from there. It's a little ways down still. Okay, yeah, South Africa is a ways down. So it's about halfway through Namibia. So the weather, I think, in South Africa is really similar to the weather you told me that is in Uruguay. Right? Like it never really gets too cold and it never really gets too hot. It's always in that like sort of between the 40s and the 80s, yeah?
Well, how much is 40s and 80s? I'm not sure. 40
degrees Fahrenheit and 80 the low and 80 degrees the high.
80 Fahrenheit, right?
Yeah, so
this is, let me just check. I don't know why we use such different stuff all the time. 26, yeah. This is like pretty hot. Right now it's 29. Today the high was 29 and we're just in spring.
Okay, so the lows for you guys would be like the equal of like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, right?
Yeah, in the winter, and it gets a little bit cooler than that.
Yeah, so the weather there is very much the same as South Africa. So that's so interesting because they look like they used to be sort of pressed into the same. Very interesting.
I'm looking to see. Amazing.
Oh no, look, the way it is, that is the bottom tip of South Africa. That would be where Montevideo is.
I think so, right?
Wow. Okay, so because the weather sounds like almost exactly the same. Wow. Okay. Yep. Here, look at that. It fits right in.
It fits right into the river.
I would have thought it was a little down lower, but no, that's perfect. So Montevideo and Cape Town would be sister cities. Very cool. Because people always say, that San Francisco or Miami, whatever, is a sister city to Cape Town. No, it's Montevideo. Montevideo.
Right. Well, here we go. We have Cape Town over here. Totally. Yeah. Yep. Wow. That's a good find.
Yep. Very interesting. I like that building. Have you been in that building? Have you been in that?
No, I haven't gone in. I should.
Now you have to go.
I'll send you pictures.
Yeah.
Where I actually did go is to this point here in Brazil. That would be the one that connects with the curve in the west of Africa. I have been there. It's a place called Natal, and I remember seeing this kind of plaque which commemorates or whatever. This is the closest point to Africa, something like that. And the place is called Natal, which would be like, Natal is a word that they would use for like the birth of Christ. To be born is nacimiento, Natal. So
there's a place, I think it's in South Africa, called KwaZulu Natal. Right? My sister talks about this KwaZulu Natal. I'm pretty sure that's in South Africa, but that's interesting. So it's the same. KwaZulu Natal. Anyhow, both my sister and my father used to live in South Africa. So
I've heard you talk about that.
All right, well, that's very cool. So I had my Montevideo lesson today.
I think that there is something very, very relevant about Uruguay and Montevideo for the coming I don't know, era or whatever is going to play a particular role. And another thing that they always say about Uruguay is that it's shaped like a heart.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some labels that I don't know how to take them out only the labels that I've put of
Yeah.
places that I visited, but the shape of the outline of the country, and it's
like
outlined
like the real heart. Yeah, the real heart, not the heart shape. Yeah.
And it's actually the edges, let's say, of the country, the borders, it's rivers. It's outlined by rivers.
Yeah. I wonder also, so you have Santa Fe here off of the River Plata. I wonder the connection energetically with Santa Fe in New Mexico, which is off of the Rio Grande.
Yeah, this is in Argentina.
This is Argentina here? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm curious also. Okay. So there's an area called Esperanza, also near Santa Fe in New Mexico. So that's interesting. Huh. Okay. I wonder what the connections between this Santa Fe and the Santa Fe in the United States are.
And you also mentioned hot springs, and there's hot springs over here in very close to the border between Argentina. So this city is called Concordia in Argentina, and on the other side you have Salto, which would mean jump. For some reason they call it jump. And here Termas de Layman would be that thermal waters.
And they have a little mushroom there waiting for us. That's where the Smurfs live.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
And since we are okay, let's just close the hour with another interesting thing about Montevideo. So here I'm already in Brazil.
Yeah.
But if we go back a little bit more, I don't know how good your Spanish is, but do you recognize this name?
33.
Yeah. That's the name of one of the 19 departments.
That's
so
interesting.
The 19 states, let's say, that form Uruguay. One is that.
33. Wow, that's interesting.
Something's happening there.
And you guys call all of the highways rutas?
Yeah.
All right. And we have look at the coffee we like to drink every day here. It's from Austin. It's called Ruta Maya. So there you go. We've linked it all up.
Yeah, because you guys have very different, perhaps because of the size of the US, you have highways, you have freeways, motorways, routes, but here everything is a route. Yeah.
Everything is a route. What does Uruguay have its own like special coffee, the own special roasts or beans that are grown there? Like I know, like we get a lot of like Guatemalan coffee or a lot of different things like that. Is there something special in Uruguay?
I'm not very ignorant about coffee. I know there's good coffee from Colombia, but we can check.
Right.
Let's see if there is.
It's just showing you the coffee shops.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen like beans from Uruguay. Right. So I wonder if you guys have a very big coffee trade there or not. I'll have to investigate.
What's calling my attention here is this Marley coffee, which I don't think it's a Uruguayan brand, is it? No.
I the cat with the cookies, let's say, Okay. I was just curious because I'm super into coffee and I like to order from all these different fancy roasters and stuff, but I can't remember if I've seen Uruguay coffee beans. I'm gonna have to check. So anyway, okay, where should we go now, my friend?
So I can think. Oh, maybe we could close this hour.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the other side, I have another story of another weird, physical, visual, whatever anomaly that I had on the beach actually. So we can.
Okay.
We can talk a little bit about that.
And I have something for you, something that's been a hot topic on with all my people and all my groups, and I want to see what you have to say about it. So
okay, awesome.
Okay. All right.
So thank you, everybody. Second hour will be in Patreon. You can find the link on the description below. I find it funny to do this part because I'm not talking to anybody really in my now moment, but it's in the future, but it's there present. And for me, it's kind of mind-boggling, but I try to do this as normal and as normal as I can. So, hey, everybody, thank you again so much. So yes, I was saying the second hour will be on Patreon. You can find Emily where?
You can find my YouTube channel is Emily Moyer. I also have a Rumble channel, Emily Moyer. You can find me on patreon.com/offplanetmedia, emilymoyer.locals.com. And you can also go to my website, which is emilycmoyer.com.
Amazing. I really recommend everybody, I mean, if you're here not because of Emily, then well, that's amazing. But if you don't know about her and you're here, I do really recommend that you go check out her stuff. It's very mind-expanding conversations and information. And so, yeah, thank you so much. And we will see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye.
Okay.